Are you stuck not because you're a failure, but because you're paralyzed by fear of starting? You might think you're just standing still waiting for the right moment, but the truth is, every day you delay, you're not just missing opportunities, you're missing your life. This isn't some feel-good platitude. It's the cold, hard reality for millions who have dreams, plans, and ambitions, but never pull the trigger. And maybe, just maybe, that's you right now watching this. You're not alone. Across the world, people talk themselves out of greatness every single day. They wait for better timing, more information, or the mythical sign from the universe. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of those people end up watching the train leave the station, wondering what could have been. And the crazy part, they don't even realize they're doing it until it's too late. Success isn't missed by people who try and fail. It's missed by people who never really try at all. Think about the stories you tell yourself. Maybe you convince yourself you're just being cautious, responsible, or waiting until things are perfect. Maybe you say you're too busy, too tired, or not quite ready. It sounds reasonable, it feels safe, but that comfort is a trap, because the longer you stay there, the more it turns into a prison, one you build brick by brick, excuse by excuse. If you're watching this, you probably have at least one goal or dream that matters. Maybe you want to launch a business, learn a new skill, or just make a meaningful change in your life. But something's holding you back. The fear of starting is a silent killer. It doesn't announce itself with drama or fanfare. It just whispers, wait a little longer, it's not time yet. And so you wait and wait until one day you look up and you realize the train is gone, the doors are closed, and you never even got on board. Why does this happen? Why do smart, talented, well-meaning people sabotage their own futures without realizing it? Legendary motivator Zig Ziglar called this the biggest tragedy in life, not failure, but paralysis, the inability to move. Zig knew from experience you don't miss out because you're not good enough. You miss out because you hesitate, you second guess, you play small. The real danger isn't shooting for the stars and falling short. It's never aiming at all. This video is your wake-up call. It's not about positive thinking or hollow affirmations. It's about taking real control of your choices, your actions, and your life. We're going to walk through the exact steps Zig Ziglar taught, steps that changed thousands of lives, including his own. You'll discover why people stay stuck, how to break the cycle, and most importantly, how to set yourself up to finally win. Every story, every example, every metaphor in this video is a roadmap from stuck to unstoppable. But let's be clear, this isn't just theory. Zig's stories aren't just motivational fluff. They're battle-tested blueprints drawn from decades in the trenches, years spent helping ordinary people achieve extraordinary results. You'll hear about missed trains, biscuits that never rose, and the real reason some people seem to have it all while others always come up short. There are lessons about attitude, about work, about daring to believe in something bigger than your circumstance, and you'll see why. If you keep playing it safe, you're actually putting everything at risk. Don't worry, this isn't going to be a lecture. It's a conversation. It's the push you've been waiting for, the one that says, enough waiting, start moving. If you stay to the end, you'll not only have the tools to break free from indecision, but you'll also see why now, right now, is the perfect moment to act. Not because conditions are perfect, but because your window of opportunity is wide open, if you're bold enough to step through. Here's what you can expect. We'll start with a story about a man in New York who missed his train, not because he was unlucky, but because he couldn't let go of doubt. Then we'll talk about biscuits that never rose and what they reveal about the people who almost do things but never finish. We'll break down what truly makes people rise above the crowd and why blaming others is a recipe for staying stuck. You'll see the power of real goal setting, the trap of I'll do it if thinking, and how to finally break the invisible barriers that keep you playing small. By the end, you'll have more than motivation. You'll have a plan. You'll understand how to act when everyone else is still making excuses. You'll see why hard work is always worth it, and why playing the game like it matters is the only way to truly win. You'll even learn what freedom and opportunity really mean, and why, even in a world full of obstacles, there's always a way to rise if you refuse to settle. So here's the challenge. Don't just watch this video. Use it, apply what you learn, share your story in the comments, and if you make it all the way to the end, type "believe" so we can highlight you in a future episode, because at the end of the day, it's not about missing the train. It's about getting on board before it's too late. Ready to get started? Then let's go. Because the only thing worse than failing is never trying at all. And today, we're leaving that old story behind forever. There's a story Zig Ziglar loved to tell. It sounds simple, almost like a joke at first. Just a guy in New York, a penny and a weighing scale, but it's not just a joke. It's a mirror for anyone who's ever felt stuck or wondered why they can't seem to catch a break. And if you've ever felt like the world is moving without you, pay close attention. Because in this story is the real reason people stay on the sidelines, even as life speeds away. Meet John Jones, ordinary guy, big city, big dreams. He's in New York, but wants to get to Boston. So like any logical person, he heads to the airport, buys his ticket, and with a few minutes to spare, decides to kill some time. He spots one of those old-fashioned scales, the kind that gives you your weight and a fortune for a penny. On a whim, he steps up, drops in his coin, and waits. The machine whirs, the card pops out, and he reads it. Your name is John Jones. You weigh 188 pounds. You're going to catch the 220 to Boston. It's spooky. How could this machine possibly know? He laughs it off, but is a little rattled. Now, most people would just take their good fortune and move on. Not John. He's suspicious, maybe even a little paranoid. There's got to be a trick, he thinks, so he tries again. New penny, same machine. Card pops out. Your name is still John Jones. You still weigh 188 pounds. You're still catching the 220 to Boston. Now he's determined to outsmart the system. He runs to the restroom, changes his clothes, tries to disguise himself. He marches out, slips another penny in, and sure enough, the card is waiting. Your name is still John Jones. You still weigh 188 pounds, but you just missed the 220 to Boston. It's funny until you realize this is exactly how most people live their lives. We question, we hesitate, we overthink. We worry about whether we're ready, whether we've got the right outfit, whether someone is playing a trick on us. All the while, opportunities pass us by, not because we're unqualified, but because we're frozen in indecision. The missed train is a metaphor for every chance that slipped away while you were second-guessing yourself. Think about it. How many times have you known exactly what you needed to do, but talked yourself out of it? How often have you seen the opportunity, felt the timing was right, but hesitated, and by the time you finally moved, the moment was gone. The train had left, the doors had closed, and you were left holding a ticket to nowhere. Why do we do this? Why do so many talented, intelligent people stand paralyzed on the platform, watching their dreams speed away? The answer isn't luck, intelligence, or circumstance. It's doubt. Doubt is the anchor that holds us back. It makes us question the very things we already know to be true. It keeps us running in circles, trying new disguises, new approaches, new pennies, when all we needed was to move forward with what we already had. And here's the real kicker. Most people never even realize they're missing the train. They think they're just being careful, just preparing, just making sure everything's perfect. But the only thing they're perfecting is their ability to watch opportunities slip through their fingers. But what if you could change that? What if, instead of waiting for the right time, you decided to act now before your doubts had a chance to talk you out of it? What if you accepted that no amount of disguises or second attempts will ever make you more ready than you are at this exact moment? The truth is, the people who catch their train aren't always the smartest or the fastest. They're the ones who move even when they're unsure. The world doesn't reward those who hesitate. It rewards those who take action, who trust themselves enough to step onto the platform, board the train, and figure out the rest on the journey. Every success story you've ever admired started with a leap of faith. A moment when someone decided to act, even if it meant risking embarrassment, failure, or being wrong. They didn't wait for the machine to confirm their identity 3 times. They bought their ticket, took their seat, and trusted that the journey would make sense along the way. So here's the challenge. Stop letting doubt hold the pen. Stop waiting for certainty before you move. Because in the end, it's not about how many times you check your ticket, change your clothes, or consult the scale. It's about getting on the train while the doors are still open. What comes next is even more revealing, because missing the train is just the start. The real question is, what are you doing while you wait? Are you making biscuits or just letting them sit and bake in indecision? Because the people who win aren't just those who catch their train. They're the ones who keep moving, keep acting, and never let fear decide their fate. And the next lesson, it's about biscuits, yes, really, and how they reveal the secret difference between doers, half-doers, and the people who never quite get off the bench. But that, as you're about to see, is where most people get cooked long before they even start. You might think life's big lessons only show up in boardrooms or history books, but sometimes the most powerful truth comes out of a kitchen, hidden in something as humble as a biscuit. Ziglar had a knack for spotting the extraordinary in the ordinary. And his story about those famously flat biscuits isn't just a funny Southern anecdote, it's a warning and a blueprint for anyone who's ever sat on their dreams so long they never rose at all. Let's set the scene. Small-town Yazoo City, Mississippi. Young Zig is spending time at the neighbor's house, lured as much by the possibility of a hot meal as by the company. On this day, the cook, a woman with decades of wisdom, brings out a tray of biscuits that, no exaggeration, are thinner than a silver dollar. They're not golden, fluffy, and full of promise. They're flat, deflated. Zig, a curious kid with an appetite for both food and stories, can't resist asking, "Mad, what happened to those biscuits?" She laughs, a deep, knowing laugh only a cook or a seasoned adult can produce, and says, "Those biscuits squatted to rise, but they just got cooked in the squat." The kitchen erupts in laughter, but the lesson goes deeper than a kitchen mishap. Pause for a second. Have you ever known someone, maybe even yourself, who was always about to do something? They're forever on the edge of a breakthrough, about to write that book, about to start that business, about to call that person. Just as soon as they say, then list a dozen impossible conditions that need to be met. They're like those biscuits full of potential, but paralyzed in the squat, never rising, never becoming what they could have been. These are the half-a-minders, as Zig calls them, people who make big plans, get halfway up, then settle back down. They're professional starters, legendary planners, but chronic non-finishers. And it's not because they're lazy or lack talent, it's because the world rewards action, not intention. Nobody remembers the biscuit that almost rose. Nobody writes biographies about the person who was about to. History is made by people who finish what they start, even if it means burning a few biscuits along the way. Let's get brutally honest. The world is full of almost stories, almost succeeded, almost made it, almost called, but almost never put dinner on the table, landed a sale, or built a legacy. The graveyard of dreams is full of good intentions that never made it out of the squat. Why? Because it's safer to sit than to leap. When you sit, you can't fail, at least not in any obvious way. You avoid embarrassment, you avoid risk, but you also avoid growth, reward, and every meaningful thing you claim to want. So how do you avoid becoming a biscuit that just got cooked in the squat? First, realize that potential means nothing without movement. Your idea, your talent, your dream, none of it matters if you never act. Sitting on your potential is no safer than taking a risk. In fact, it's more dangerous because regret grows heavier with every year you spend on the bench. Second, beware of the just as soon as trap. Life will never be perfect. Conditions will never be ideal. If you wait for everything to line up, you'll wait forever. The most successful people are rarely the ones with the best timing. They're the ones who move with whatever timing they have. They start with what's available, fail fast, and learn as they go. They get in the oven, not just onto the tray. But maybe you're thinking, that's not me. I get things done great. But if you're honest, how many times have you let fear, uncertainty, or the endless pursuit of the perfect moment hold you back? How many times have you squatted to rise, promised yourself this time would be different, only to end up right where you started? Here's a secret. Every doer, every high achiever, every person you admire for their success at some point, they stood at the crossroads and chose to rise, even if it meant risking falling flat. They moved, not because they were certain, but because they refused to let comfort become their coffin. They learned the hard truth. Sitting still is a choice, and it's almost never the right one. If you're tired of being a half-a-minder, here's your turning point. Action doesn't have to be big, but it has to be now. Make the call. Start the project. Take the first step. The world isn't waiting for your perfect plan. It's waiting to see if you'll finally rise, because the biscuits that rise might burn, but at least they're tasted. The ones that squat, nobody remembers them at all. So the next time you feel yourself hesitating, ask yourself, do you want to be remembered for almost or for done? Because the difference is just one move. Up and out of the squat into the fire where life actually happens. And if you think the secret is about luck or having the right ingredients, think again, because the next lesson isn't about what you have on the outside, but what you carry inside. The thing that makes you rise isn't circumstance, it's character. And that lesson comes, believe it or not, from a bunch of balloons and one honest, wise balloon man. Picture a busy New York City street decades ago. A street full of noise, strangers, possibility. In the middle of the chaos, a man stands quietly at the curb, selling balloons. To boost business, he tries something different. Every so often, he releases a bright balloon. Red, then white, then yellow. Every time one floats up, a crowd gathers. Children tugging their parents, smiles blooming. People are drawn to what rises. After a while, a small boy, skin dark as polished mahogany, tugs the man's sleeve. His voice is small but curious. "Mister, if you let one of those black balloons go, would it rise too?" The balloon man looks at him, really looks, and gives an answer that still echoes today. "Son, it's not the color on the outside that makes it go up. It's what's inside." That's the heart of it, isn't it? The secret nobody talks about in the noise of daily life. You can spend your whole life wishing you had a better start, a different look, more advantages, a luckier break. You can stare at others, those who seem to rise effortlessly, comparing yourself and coming up short. But what truly lifts a person isn't what people see. It's what nobody can see: grit, vision, resilience, hope. Ziglar never sugarcoated this point. He said every person has inside them everything they need to achieve outstanding success. Not most people, every person, that means you. But what do most people do with this truth? Instead of looking inside, they point fingers out. They say it's their fault. Or if only I'd had what she has, I'd be successful. Blame is the currency of the stuck. It spins easy but never buys progress. Let's break this down. The self-made man is a myth people like to claim when things go right. But have you ever seen someone stand up and declare, "I'm a self-made failure"? No, because failure gets passed around like a hot potato. It was his fault, it was her fault, it was the system, the market, my boss, my parents, on and on until the whole world is responsible for your missed train, your flat biscuits, your sunken dreams. But take a look at your hand. Point one finger out. There are three pointing right back at you. That's not just a cliche, that's the key to everything. Because as long as you're convinced your situation depends on someone else, you'll never take the actions that can truly change your life. Only when you realize your success is in your own hands do you actually start moving. The people who rise, truly rise, are the ones who take ownership. They understand that blaming is easy, but change is hard. That's why they choose the hard road. They don't need perfect circumstances. They don't wait for someone to hand them a red balloon. They work with what's inside: faith, discipline, the willingness to start even when it's hard. But let's get real. This isn't about pretending outside obstacles don't exist. Life throws curveballs. Some people do start at a disadvantage. Some have more balloons, more pennies, more luck. But history is packed with stories of underdogs who soared, not because they denied the odds, but because they refused to let the odds define them. They focused on what they could control, their attitude, their effort, their next step. Here's the thing, nobody tells you the world doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't matter if your balloon is red, black, or yellow. The market doesn't care if your parents didn't believe in you, if your first boss was a jerk, or if your first business failed. The only thing that matters is whether you use what's inside to rise or use what's outside to shrink. And if you need proof, look around. You'll find people succeeding against every imaginable odd, people with less talent, fewer connections, more setbacks, but more drive. Why? Because they stopped waiting for the world to lift them and started using what was already inside. So what about you? Are you still comparing your balloon to everyone else's? Are you waiting for someone to come along and lift you up? Are you ready to believe that what's inside you, the drive, the vision, the spark, is enough to get you started? Because if you're always looking outside for your reason to rise, you'll never see the power you already have. This isn't about self-help slogans or empty hype. It's about taking a hard look in the mirror and deciding that from this moment forward, you won't blame, you won't wait, you won't compare, you'll act, you'll build from the inside out. And once you understand that, once you take responsibility for what happens next, something changes. Your goals get sharper, your energy rises, you begin to set a direction for your life, not just drift along hoping for a break. You move from hoping to planning, from wishing to working. You take ownership, and ownership is the launch pad for greatness. But what if you don't know what direction to go? What if you're not even sure where you are? That's where the next piece comes in, the power of setting real, measurable, audacious goals. Because once you take responsibility for your life, the next step is to get honest about where you're starting and where you want to go. Only then do you have a shot at catching that train. And that, as you're about to see, is the real difference between people who drift and people who win. It's easy to coast through life thinking you're moving forward, but if you've never paused to decide where you're going, you're just drifting. Zig Ziglar saw it over and over, people with big dreams and open calendars, but no map. They'd work hard, burn out, start over, and end up right where they began, always tired but never satisfied. Why? Because activity is not achievement. Only a clear target transforms energy into results. Let's get real. You cannot hit a goal you haven't set, yet most people are doing exactly that, living every day as if things will just work out. They know what they don't want, stress, regret, failure. But ask them what they do want specifically, and suddenly there's silence. It's like getting in a car and driving fast, really fast, with no address in the GPS. You burn gas, cover distance, but end up nowhere new. Take the story of the cookware salesman who dropped by Zig's office one December. He was young, ambitious, and bubbling with optimism. Zig asked him, "What are your plans for next year?" The answer came quick, "I'm going to sell more than I did this year." Sounds great, right? Except for one tiny problem. When Zig pressed him for details, the man sheepishly admitted, "Actually, I don't know how much I sold this year." The dream was real, but the plan was foggy. Think about that. How often do we convince ourselves that wishing harder or wanting more will move the needle? The reality is harsher. You can't grow what you don't measure. You can't reach a goal you can't define. "I'll do better" isn't a goal, it's a wish. And wishes have a nasty habit of fading away in the face of daily frustrations and distractions. This isn't about shaming anyone for not having a 10-year life plan. It's about waking up to the truth that hope is not a strategy. The future belongs to people with a plan that's so clear it's written down, broken into steps, and checked regularly. Zig insisted that goals should be specific, big enough to excite you, and close enough to pull you forward every day. Here's why. When you aim high, you have a reason to get back up when you fall. Long-term goals give meaning to short-term setbacks. If your only goal is to get through the day, any little obstacle feels huge. But if you're after something bigger, those little setbacks are just stepping stones. That's why big dreams matter. They pull you through the grind. They make the tough days feel worth it. And it's not just about the distant horizon. Daily goals matter just as much. They give you proof that you're moving. Every small win is a vote for the person you're becoming. If your only goals are long-term, it's easy to get discouraged. You need the little wins. Proof that you're getting closer step by step. But what about people who say, I just want to see how far I can go? Ambition is powerful, but it needs direction. Picture this, two people start a journey. One knows the destination and maps the route. The other says, I'll figure it out as I go. Who gets there faster? Who gets there at all? Planning doesn't guarantee success, but the lack of it almost always guarantees wandering. Maybe you're thinking, I'm not a goal setter. I like to keep things flexible. That's fine. Life throws curveballs, but flexibility without focus just means you're easy to blow off course. The secret is to set your sights on a destination, then adapt your route as you go. Goals are anchors in the storm, not chains that trap you. If you're stuck, start simple. Write down one thing you want to achieve in the next month. Make it clear, measurable, and just a little bit scary. Now, break it down. What's the first step you can take today? Don't worry about the 10th step or the 100th. Focus on the next one. The clarity you get from naming your goal is the first spark of momentum. Remember Zig's cookware salesman? He had the breakthrough only when he finally sat down, checked his records, and started measuring everything. Sales per hour, per day, per week. The numbers weren't always pretty, but they told the truth. Armed with facts instead of guesses, he finally had a scoreboard and the determination to break records instead of just wishing for them. And it paid off. He went from an average year to shattering all-time records, not because he suddenly became a genius or got lucky, but because he knew exactly where he stood and exactly where he was headed. His effort wasn't scattered anymore. It was focused like sunlight through a magnifying glass. And that's when things started to heat up. So here's the hard truth. You don't need more motivation. You need a map. You need a destination, a deadline, and the honesty to track your progress. Because the difference between wishing and winning is as simple and as powerful as writing it down and taking the first real step. And if you're wondering what's most likely to stop you, it's not failure or even fear. It's the trap of conditional action, the I'll do it if excuse factor that kills more dreams than any setback ever could. That's the next pitfall we need to smash before it sabotages everything you've just set in motion. It's a word so tiny, most people barely notice it, but hidden inside that little word, as is the deadliest trap for any dreamer, doer, or would-be success story. I'll do it as soon as I'll go for it, as long as I'll push through as much as I can. On the surface, it sounds logical, even responsible. But look closer and you'll see that as is the back door for doubt, delay, and self-sabotage. Zig Ziglar saw the danger firsthand. He told the story of that young cookware salesman who went from average to record-shattering. But before the breakthrough, this guy had a habit of making as promises. You know the type. I'll hit my goal as long as nothing goes wrong. I'll break the record as long as nobody in my family gets sick, as long as I don't lose my voice, as long as the stars line up, as long as the weather's perfect. It sounds harmless, but what you're really doing is building in an escape route before you've even begun. Here's the twisted genius of the as trap. It gives you permission to quit before you even try. It hands you a ready-made excuse for every bump in the road. And if you look back at the graveyard of abandoned goals in your life, chances are you'll find this word carved on more than a few headstones. I'll stick to my diet as long as work isn't too stressful. I'll save money as long as there aren't too many unexpected bills. I'll work on my dream as soon as things slow down. But things never slow down. Conditions are never perfect. There will always be something. That's what made the cookware salesman's breakthrough so remarkable. After years of letting the as trap set the rules, he dropped it cold. He didn't say, I'll break the sales record as long as nothing goes wrong. He said, I will break the record, period. And immediately, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. He lost his voice for 3 weeks. There were family illnesses, even deaths. But because he'd already cut off his escape routes, he powered through. The result, he didn't just break the record, he shattered it. Think about your own life. Where are you letting as set the limits? Where are you waiting for things to line up before you start? I'll start that business as soon as I have more money. I'll write my book as soon as I have more time. I'll get in shape as soon as the holidays are over. On and on until life has slipped by while you were waiting for conditions that never appeared. There's a reason why high achievers eliminate as from their vocabulary. They understand that success demands commitment, not conditional effort. They know that life will throw curveballs, and if your resolve is conditional, those curveballs become dead ends. But when you commit, truly commit, you find a way through the setbacks instead of using them as a reason to quit. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The as trap is seductive because it lets you feel like you're making progress without ever risking real failure. You can tell yourself and others that you were ready, that you would have made it as long as nothing got in the way. It's a safe story, but it's not the one anyone remembers. The world remembers the people who finished, not the ones who almost did. So how do you break out? Start by making unconditional commitments. Instead of, I'll do it as long as nothing goes wrong, try, I'll do it no matter what. Instead of, I'll start when the time is right, say, I'll start today. Set your goal, close the back doors, and burn the escape routes. The only way is forward. But maybe you're thinking, that sounds risky. What if things really do go wrong? They will. That's the point. There will be days you want to quit, days when the odds seem impossible, days when everyone else would understand if you gave up. But that's where breakthroughs happen, not in the comfort of perfect conditions, but in the heat of adversity. The real secret, the moment you cut off your escape routes, you start discovering just how resourceful, creative, and resilient you really are. When quitting is not an option, you find ways around, through, or over every obstacle. You stop letting life happen to you and start making things happen for yourself. And this isn't just theory. Every world-changing invention, every gold medal, every great novel, every comeback story you admire was written by someone who refused to play the as game. They set their eyes on the goal and moved rain or shine, win or lose, easy or hard. So here's the challenge for you. What's one thing you've been putting off until as soon as name it, own it, and do it anyway without waiting for conditions to be perfect? Because the road to success isn't paved with as moments, it's built by people who show up, stand up, and push forward no matter what. And the next time you catch yourself reaching for an excuse, remember you don't need an excuse, you need a reason. You need a why that's stronger than your excuses. And if you don't have one yet, don't worry, the next lesson will help you find it. Because there's a trap even trickier than as. It's the invisible ceiling that others put on your life and sometimes that you put on yourself. If you want to know how to break free, keep watching. Imagine for a second that your life is a glass jar. You can see the world outside. You know somewhere beyond that invisible ceiling is freedom, success, maybe even greatness. But there's something keeping you inside, something you can't quite see, but you can always feel. This isn't just a thought experiment. It's one of Ziglar's most famous metaphors, the flea trainer. And if you've ever wondered why you can't seem to break past a certain point, this story is about you. Here's how it goes. You catch a bunch of fleas. Yes, fleas, the kind you'd normally try to get rid of. You drop them into a glass jar and screw on the lid. What happens next? The fleas start jumping over and over, hitting the lid every time. It doesn't matter how much it hurts or how often they fail, they keep going, trying to reach the top. Now, here's the fascinating part. After a while, the fleas stop hitting the lid. They keep jumping, but not quite as high, just enough to avoid the pain. Eventually, you can even take the lid off completely and they'll never escape. Why? Because they've been conditioned to believe there's a limit, even when it's not really there. Let that sink in. The greatest limitations aren't the ones the world puts on us. They're the ones we start putting on ourselves. Every time you hit the lid, a setback, a criticism, a failure, you start to learn, don't jump too high, don't get your hopes up, don't dream too big. After a while, you start living inside a jar that doesn't even need a lid anymore. It's not just a story about fleas, it's the reality for millions. How many people do you know who started out with huge dreams only to get knocked down once or twice and decide that's just how it's going to be? How many times have you seen someone, maybe even yourself, try, fail, and then set their sights just a little lower just to avoid the sting of disappointment? Zig called it being a SNIOP, susceptible to the negative influence of other people. That's what happens when you let the world write on your chalkboard, when you let other people decide how high you can jump. Sometimes it's a parent who says, be realistic. Sometimes it's a boss who shoots down your ideas, a friend who laughs at your ambitions, or your own inner critic that keeps reminding you of every mistake. But the craziest part, once you believe the lid is there, you don't even need someone to hold you down anymore. You start holding yourself back. You stay in jobs you hate. You avoid opportunities that scare you. You settle for good enough because reaching higher feels impossible. If you want proof that these limits are more mental than physical, just look at the 4-minute mile. For decades, athletes everywhere believed that running a mile in less than 4 minutes was physically impossible, a ceiling nobody could break. Doctors said it would kill you. Coaches said it couldn't be done. Then in 1954, Roger Bannister shattered the barrier. Suddenly, within months, other athletes around the world were breaking the 4-minute mile too. What changed? Not the training, not the genetics, just the belief that it could be done. This isn't just sports trivia. It's a blueprint for breaking your own barriers. The moment you see someone else escape the jar, your mind opens to new possibilities. The moment you start to question whether the lid is really there, you start to jump higher. The difference between those who settle and those who soar is never just talent or luck. It's the willingness to challenge the limits, especially the ones you've accepted, without ever really testing. But what if you've been jumping in the jar for so long that you can't even imagine life without a lid? Then your first job isn't to succeed, it's to unlearn, to recognize that other people's opinions are not facts, that every time you avoid risk, you're just proving the lid is still on, even if it isn't. So ask yourself, whose voice are you listening to? Who put the lid on your jar? And are you ready to risk hitting it again just to see if you can break through? Because every breakthrough, every leap, every extraordinary achievement starts with someone who refuses to let the past define the future. The flea trainer metaphor isn't about fleas, it's about freedom. The kind of freedom that comes when you realize the only real limits are the ones you accept. And the moment you refuse to accept them, you become unstoppable. The moment you train yourself to jump higher despite the risk, you open the possibility for others to do the same. It's not just your future at stake, it's everyone who's watching, wondering if maybe, just maybe, there's more beyond the glass. And that brings us to the next lesson, how attitude and mindset can turn even the worst circumstances into unexpected victories. Because sometimes it's not about removing the lid at all. It's about changing how you see what's inside the jar. If you ask 10 people what separates the successful from everyone else, you'll get 10 different answers. Talent, luck, connections, money, timing. But look closer and you'll find that attitude sits quietly behind almost every achievement story. Not just a positive attitude. Anyone can plaster on a smile and say, think positive. No, what really counts is a mindset that refuses to let circumstances dictate outcomes. Zig Ziglar believed attitude was everything. To him, it was more than optimism. It was a way of seeing the world that turned every setback into a setup for something bigger. He illustrated it perfectly with a story about two people sitting on opposite sides of a lunch table in Flint, Michigan. It was a tough time in Flint. General Motors was on strike. Business was by all measures bad. People were losing money, houses, hope. Sitting to Zig's left was a small man who couldn't stop complaining. Nobody's buying, business is dead, nobody even wants to eat. His words filled the room with gloom, a cloud that threatened to suffocate even the most determined spirits. But on Zig's right was a woman, a real estate agent with a sparkle in her eye. When asked how things were, she didn't miss a beat. "Isn't it wonderful," she beamed. "People finally have time to look for houses. They can take their time, study every room, every closet, even the attic. They know the strike will end soon, and now's their chance to get a deal before prices go up again." Then she leaned in, conspiratorial. "If you know anyone in Washington, tell them to keep the strike going a few more weeks. I've never sold so many houses in my life." Same city, same crisis, two completely different realities. One saw only dead ends, the other saw open doors. The difference wasn't the market, it wasn't luck, it was mindset. Here's the part nobody tells you. Life is rarely about what happens to you, it's about how you interpret and respond to what happens. Your attitude isn't just some secret sauce for feeling good, it's the filter through which you process every event. Problems become puzzles. Roadblocks become detours. Losses become lessons. But most people, when faced with adversity, default to blame or self-pity. They convince themselves that conditions have to improve before they can succeed, that the weather must change, the boss must leave, the market must bounce back. They wait for their circumstances to hand them a reason to get up and try again. But that's not how breakthroughs happen. Attitude is what lets you see opportunity in a crisis. It's what lets you dig deeper, keep going, and find a way when everyone else is throwing up their hands. It's the difference between those who see only limits and those who look for leverage, even in the darkest moments. But let's be real, it's easy to have a good attitude when things are going well. The real test comes when the chips are down, when nothing's going your way, when the world feels like it's stacked against you. That's when your mindset matters most. Will you fold, or will you find the one thing, however small, that you can still control and make better? Remember this, you can't always choose your circumstances, but you can always choose your response. That's what sets the winners apart. They don't pretend bad things aren't happening. They just refuse to let those things define what comes next. This is why two people can look at the same event and see opposite things. One sees disaster, the other sees a chance. One gives up, the other gears up. In every downturn, there are people quietly building, learning, and growing while others are retreating. The winners are the ones who train their minds to find the silver lining, not because they're naive, but because they know their attitude will either open doors or keep them locked. So what about you? Do you let setbacks shrink your vision, or do you use them to fuel your next step? When life throws a punch, do you duck and cover, or do you look for a way to counterpunch? Are you waiting for the world to give you a reason to be positive, or are you determined to create your own? Zig used to say, your business isn't out there, it's right here between your ears. He wasn't just talking about sales, he was talking about life. Whatever you want to achieve, it starts with your mindset. If you can train your mind to expect and look for opportunity, to focus on solutions instead of problems, you become resilient. And resilience is more valuable than any external advantage. And here's the thing, mindset isn't magic, it's a habit. The more you look for possibility, the more you see it. The more you train yourself to act, even when you don't feel like it, the stronger your resilience muscle becomes. Eventually, you become the person others look to when things go sideways, the calm in the storm, the one who sees a way forward. But all the mindset in the world means nothing without action. Attitude must lead to movement, or it's just a good feeling with nowhere to go. That's why the next lesson matters, how real progress happens, not just by thinking, but by doing the work over and over until the pump finally flows. There's a truth that sits quietly at the heart of every success story. Nothing comes before the work. Not luck, not genius, not even the world's best attitude. You can dream, plan, visualize, and hype yourself up all day, but until you actually roll up your sleeves and do the work, nothing moves. Zig Ziglar knew this better than anyone, and he taught it with a metaphor that hits home, priming the pump. Picture a hot, dusty day in rural Alabama. Two friends, Bernard and Jimmy, are driving through the back roads, thirsty and tired. They spot an old farmhouse and a weathered hand pump out back, the kind that looks like it hasn't given water in years. Desperate, Bernard leaps out, grabs the handle, and starts pumping for all he's worth. Up and down, sweat beading on his brow, arms burning, nothing, not even a trickle. Frustrated, Bernard is ready to quit, but Jimmy knows a secret, one passed down through generations of anyone who's ever lived off the land. We have to prime the pump. It means you have to pour water in before you can get water out. Jimmy fetches a battered old bucket, fills it from a nearby stream, and pours it into the pump. Then Bernard starts pumping again. This time, after a few tense moments, a thin stream of water appears. Bernard keeps going, and suddenly, gush! Cold, clear water flows, sweeter than anything they've ever tasted. The lesson is clear. Life, just like that pump, doesn't give up its rewards to those who wait, wish, or demand. It opens up for those willing to do the upfront work, those willing to pour in before anything comes out. It's a law of nature, business and personal growth. You can't expect to reap before you sow. But here's where most people get stuck. They pump for a while, maybe even work up a good sweat, then give up just before the breakthrough. This isn't working, they say. Why bother? They don't realize that sometimes the greatest rewards come after the greatest effort. Success always asks for proof. How badly do you want it? Are you willing to put in the effort even when nothing seems to be happening? Are you willing to stick with it when everyone else quits? This isn't just a metaphor for water or business. Think about your own life. How many times have you started something, a new habit, a project, a relationship, and given up when results didn't show up right away? How often have you looked at others' success and assumed they got lucky when in reality they were just willing to pump a little longer, a little harder, and with more belief than the next person? And here's another secret. Once the water starts flowing, it gets easier. You don't have to pump as hard. You settle into a rhythm and the rewards keep coming as long as you don't stop completely. But if you do, if you let the pump dry out, you have to start all over again. Momentum is precious. Don't waste it. Some people stand in front of the stove of life and say, "Give me heat, then I'll give you wood." They want the reward before they're willing to pay the price, but that's not how anything meaningful works. You have to invest before you harvest. You have to put yourself out there sometimes over and over before you get anything back. It's tempting to look for shortcuts, to hope there's an easier way. But the people who win in any field are the ones who prime the pump, do the grunt work, and keep going long after the thrill of starting has worn off. They understand that real progress isn't always visible right away. It's like those first stubborn pumps. The ground is moving, the pressure is building, but nothing seems to be happening, yet every pump counts. Every effort stacks up unseen until one day results burst through. So what does this mean for you? It means don't quit before the water flows. Don't abandon your goals just because the first, second, or 10th try didn't work. Don't tell yourself the pump is broken when you haven't primed it or when you haven't put in enough reps. Stay the course. Be the last one standing. The rewards always go to those who keep going even when no one is watching. And when the water finally comes, keep a steady rhythm, keep showing up, keep doing the work, because consistency, not occasional flashes of effort, is what brings lasting success. The world is full of people who almost made it, who pumped just long enough to get tired, but not long enough to get results. Don't be one of them. Do the work, prime the pump, trust the process, and don't stop even when you can't see the payoff right away. But here's the next layer. Doing the work is crucial, but it isn't enough on its own. The people who win big also have something burning inside them, an inner drive, a purpose, a reason to play the game like it really matters. And sometimes that reason is as personal as a promise, a memory, or a loved one you want to make proud. That's where our story goes next. Discovering the desire that turns effort into excellence and why playing like it matters changes everything. There's an old saying that the size of your success is measured by the strength of your desire. But desire is more than wishful thinking. It's the deep fire that refuses to go out no matter how hard life tries to smother it. It's what makes the difference between going through the motions and showing up like everything is on the line. Ziglar knew that, and he brought it home with one of his most moving stories, the story of Big Mike. Big Mike was a high school football star with a future that seemed destined for greatness. Coaches said he was all-American material. Colleges from all over the country recruited him, and he played every game with an intensity that inspired everyone around him. But life, as it often does, had other plans. After just 1 year of college, duty called. Mike joined the Army and shipped off to Korea. There, a landmine exploded near him, tearing through muscle and flesh, shattering his athletic dreams. When he returned home, Mike was changed forever. His university honored the scholarship, but the body that once made him a star was now fighting just to make the third or fourth string. Most people in his situation would have given up, let the dream die, and move on. But Mike kept showing up every practice, every day. He kept playing for the love of the game, even when the world had written him off. In the meantime, Mike's wife gave birth to their son, Little Mike. While Big Mike's career faded, Little Mike's presence on the campus grew. He was there for every practice, every game, never missing a moment. When Big Mike was on the field, Little Mike was there on the sidelines, his tiny voice echoing, "Here I am, Daddy." It was a scene that touched everyone who saw it. A father playing for his son, a son idolizing his father. Then came the second to last game of the season. For the first time, when Big Mike blew his whistle, Little Mike wasn't there. He wasn't at practice, he wasn't on the sidelines. Confused but focused, Mike went through the motions. Then his wife appeared, her face lined with grief. She broke the news. Little Mike had been killed in an accident. The blow was crushing. Mike's heart broke, his world spun, and nothing would ever be the same. The coach, understanding, told Mike to take all the time he needed. But Mike had one request. "Coach, let me start this next game. Let me have the first 3 minutes." The coach hesitated. Mike didn't have the position, and it wouldn't be fair to the team. But Mike pleaded, "Just 3 minutes, Coach. If I don't earn it, pull me out." That Saturday, Big Mike started the game, and something changed. For 60 minutes, he played with a ferocity and brilliance no one had ever seen. He blocked, he tackled, he covered more ground than ever before. The crowd was stunned. Mike led his team to victory, inspiring everyone on the field and off. In the locker room afterward, the coach was speechless. "Mike, I've never seen you play like that. How did you do it?" With tears streaming down his face, Mike replied, "Today was the first day my son ever saw me play football. He was born blind. I played today so he could finally see me do my best." Let that settle for a moment. Because when you play as if the people you love most are watching, when you act as if every move matters, because it does, something inside you changes. You dig deeper, you push harder, you play for more than just yourself. That's the raw power of desire. It gives meaning to every action, fuels you through every obstacle, and turns ordinary effort into extraordinary performance. But here's what matters most. You don't need tragedy to find this kind of fire. Desire can come from anything that matters deeply to you. Maybe it's family. Maybe it's a promise you made to yourself. Maybe it's a vision of who you could become. The point is to find something that makes you care enough to play like it's your last game every time. There's a difference between those who merely show up and those who show up with purpose. The first group waits to see if the moment will be special. The second group decides to make the moment special no matter what. When you act as if it all counts, you transform from participant to competitor, from spectator to leader. Ask yourself, are you moving through life just doing what's required? Are you bringing everything you have to every moment? Are you showing up for those who count on you, for the future you want to build, for the version of yourself you want to become? If you want to win, you have to play like it matters, even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. And if you're thinking this is all about sports, think again. This is about every area of your life, work, relationships, dreams, even your health. The world belongs to those who play full out, who care deeply, and who leave nothing on the table. When you live with that kind of desire, you'll find yourself doing things you once thought were impossible. But there's something else you need, a belief that the opportunity is there, that the dream is possible, and that it can be yours if you're willing to pay the price. That belief and the freedom to pursue it is what makes the difference between an average existence and a remarkable one. And that's where we're headed next, how freedom, opportunity, and faith in what's possible can change everything. Every country has its myths, its stories of what's possible, but few have been as fiercely optimistic about opportunity as America. Ziglar, who traveled and spoke with people from every walk of life, believed that freedom, real, practical freedom, isn't just about waving a flag or reciting a pledge. It's about the ability to choose your future, to chase a dream, and to build a life that's limited only by your willingness to work and believe. It's easy, especially in tough times, to take this freedom for granted, to focus on what isn't working, on all the obstacles, the unfairness, and the competition. But when you step back and really look, you'll find stories everywhere that prove the power of freedom, stories that are impossible anywhere else, stories that make it clear that whatever your background, something better is always possible. Zig didn't just preach this, he showed it. He'd share stories of remarkable people he met along his journey. A blind real estate salesman in San Mateo, California, earning more in a month than most make in a year, selling houses he'd never even seen. A Hungarian refugee in Detroit who, after escaping across borders and surviving on roots and berries, built a new life as a top saleswoman, paying more in taxes than most people made in a year. Or the young black man in St. Louis who started off washing cars only to become one of the highest earning car salesmen in the region before he was 30. What do these stories have in common? It wasn't luck, it wasn't a handout, and it wasn't just a matter of being in the right place at the right time. These were people who took whatever freedom they could find, paired it with relentless effort, and refused to let anyone, least of all themselves, put a lid on their potential. They didn't wait for perfect conditions, and they didn't accept the world's opinion about what was possible. They just started, kept going, and kept growing. You see, freedom isn't just a political idea, it's a daily practice. Every time you choose to act instead of complain, to build instead of blame, you're exercising your freedom. Every time you set a goal, risk failure, or stand up for what you believe in, you're honoring the opportunity that so many before you only dreamed of having. But there's a flip side. In a free society, the greatest tragedy isn't having nothing, it's having everything within reach and never going for it. It's being surrounded by opportunity and staying stuck in excuses. Because in the land of possibility, the real prison is self-doubt, the invisible chains of I can't and not for me. The greatest limits are the ones we put on ourselves. Zig was passionate about this. He'd look people in the eye and say, you can have anything you want if you're willing to help enough other people get what they want. That's the secret to success in a free society. Mutual benefit, service, and the courage to go after big goals. He'd remind his audience, sometimes with a wink and a grin, sometimes with a preacher's fire, that freedom is a terrible thing to waste. It doesn't guarantee results, but it does guarantee the chance. And sometimes that's all you need. It's worth remembering, too, that freedom isn't always easy. It comes with risk, with setbacks, with moments when it feels like everything is against you. But that's the beauty of it. In a place where anything is possible, nothing is certain. It's up to you to find the opportunity to see the potential in every hardship and to turn every no into a new reason to push forward. Zig often ended his stories about freedom with a call to action, a reminder that if you're lucky enough to live in a place where your dreams are even possible, you owe it to yourself, to those who came before you, and to those who come after to make the most of it. Don't waste your shot. Don't settle for average. Don't wait for permission. The door is open, but you have to walk through. The world is full of people who have less freedom, fewer chances, and more obstacles. But even in the toughest places, you'll find men and women chasing the dream because the desire to build, to grow, to reach is universal. The difference is, in a land of freedom, the odds are finally stacked in your favor if you're willing to move. So what will you do with your freedom? Will you let the noise and negativity drown out your ambition, or will you rise up and chase what matters most to you? Will you use your opportunity to lift yourself and others, or will you let it pass you by? Because in the end, every day you choose not to act is a day you let your freedom go to waste. Every day you hold back is a day you accept less than what's possible. And if you're still looking for permission, still looking for a sign, let this be it. You are free to dream, free to try, free to fail and get back up, and free to win. But you have to decide, you have to start, because no one else can do it for you. And that brings us to the final and most important lesson of all, the conclusion, the call to action and the reason why your story matters now more than ever. If you've watched all the way to this point, there's something inside you that refuses to stay stuck. Maybe it's a small spark, maybe it's a bonfire. Either way, you're not the kind of person content to watch the train leave the station and wonder what could have been. And after everything we've uncovered, stories of missed chances, the trap of almost, the truth about what's inside, the power of clear gold, the dangers of conditions and excuses, and the promise of freedom, you're standing at a crossroads. The question isn't, can you succeed? The real question is, will you move? Because every breakthrough, every record shattered, every legacy built starts the same way, with a decision. Not a wish, not a fantasy, not a daydream. A decision to stop waiting, stop blaming, and start building one step at a time. Maybe you see yourself in John Jones missing the train while checking and rechecking your ticket. Maybe you've been the biscuit that never rose, full of potential but held back by hesitation. Or maybe you've let others put a lid on your jar, and you've stayed there so long that you forgot you could jump higher. But now you know you are not powerless, you are not stuck, you are not at the mercy of your circumstances. The people who rise, who build, create, lead, and love with everything they've got aren't perfect. They just refuse to let their fear or their past dictate their future. If you take only one thing from Zig Ziglar's message, let it be this: everything you want is on the other side of action. Not as soon as conditions improve, not if someone finally notices you, not when the timing is perfect. Now, today, with what you have, starting where you are. That doesn't mean the road will be easy. It won't. You will have to pump when you're tired. You'll face setbacks and loss. You'll have days when quitting feels like the only option. But remember Big Mike, who played the game of his life for the person he loved most, or the real estate agent who sold homes in the middle of a strike because she saw opportunity where others saw defeat. They weren't superhuman. They simply chose to play as if it all mattered, because it does. And when you act like it matters, something incredible happens. You change not just your circumstances, but yourself. Each act of courage, every risk taken, every excuse ignored, turns you into the kind of person who attracts more opportunities, who sees more doors, who inspires others to rise. If you're waiting for a guarantee, you'll wait forever. Life is never risk-free, and no one is coming to hand you your destiny. But the freedom you have, the opportunity you hold, is the greatest gift you'll ever get. Don't waste it. Don't let the next train leave without you on it. Don't let another year go by as a half-a-minder or someone who was about to decide today to be a finisher, to move. What will you do when this video ends? Will you slide back into comfort, let your dreams cook in the squat, or will you finally act? Will you set your goals, break your own limits, and show up for your life like it truly matters? Will you believe not just in possibility, but in yourself? You've seen now that greatness isn't just for the lucky or the chosen few. It's for the ordinary person who makes extraordinary decisions. It's for the one who primes the pump, sets the goal, pushes through, and never gives up, even when nobody is watching. So here's my challenge right now. Type "believe" in the comments if you're ready to make a change. Share what step you're going to take. And don't just say it, do it. Set a goal, make a call, start the work, or pick yourself up and try again. Because the only thing worse than failing is never trying at all. This is your moment. You have the freedom, the fire, the tools, and most importantly, the choice. Don't let this be another almost in your story. Make it the day everything started to rise, because if you do, you won't just change your own life. You'll inspire others to break their lids, to get on their train, to play like it matters. And if you're still here, you're exactly the kind of person who can change everything, not just for yourself, but for everyone who's watching you, hoping you'll go first. So stand up, set the goal, prime the pump, jump higher, play with purpose, move now. I'll see you at the top,